Hey there, it's Erin, and I've got some exciting news. We are actually all getting excited and preparing for the latest Salgado to arrive. If you don't know who that is, that's actually Rachel, who is our podcast editor. If you subscribe to our emails, you then remember her from her awesome weekly emails that recap the podcasts that come out. So Rachel's been our right hand woman for years, and she's welcoming little Isaac into the world, who will join his brother Ian. And so we thought is a great opportunity. One, we want to give her a breather. She needs maternity leave. She needs to walk away from editing. But we notice how many new listeners, or maybe even old listeners, go back and listen to old episodes. And we've got like 200 episodes. So it's just amazing when we look at our statistics, how many people scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and go even all the way back to episode 1. So we thought this is a great opportunity to sprinkle in some of the best, most listened to episodes that people just love, that they keep going back to, that also are probably, a year plus old. And so we want to make it easy too for you. So you don't have to scroll and scroll and scroll. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this podcast from the vault.
I was the only female on that fence. I mean, down the fence, I can still see it, was just lined with scouts, with stopwatches, chewing tobacco, bubble gum, just cussing and whatever. And there I am, probably in a pair of pink pants and they're going, "Who's this lady? You got to be kidding me. What are you doing here?" And what I sort of realized was being who I was allowing me to serve my players in a way that was different than the people that I competed with, and in a way that they appreciated. Didn't mean that I was a fit for absolutely everybody, but there's 750 big league guys, right? I mean, I just needed 30, 50, and it was a heck of a living, right? So it was fine. I mean, go get the ones that you're aligned with. Yeah. So, making sure as leaders that we recognize that it's built little by little. Step into your authentic self moment by moment, day by day, conversation by conversation, and see how it works.
Welcome to the Because podcast with Erin and Nicole.
Wait, are we recording?
Yes, this is our intro. So we've been friends long enough to basically go from idiots to executives.
And then we got fed up with the fake working world, the rat races, and all the parts of our lives where we needed a costume to cope.
So if you're in, drop the superhero disguises and the photo filters and join us as we explore and empower authenticity everywhere.
Everywhere.
Hey, Nicole, did you know that I actually have free stuff to help people with their careers?
Is that like the free tough love career flogging that you give me every week on the podcast?
No. Yes, but a little bit nicer, a little more organized, and probably a tiny bit more helpful. My favorite is a free video course I call Unstuck Yourself.
Well, who doesn't want to get unstuck, Erin?
Yeah, exactly. So anyone can sign up just by simply going to beauthentic.inc/unstuck.
I am your number one fan. I'm there already. Unstuck me, girl.
Hey guys, I'm so excited. I know it sounds like I say this every time, but for this interview, and it's funny. The other day, somebody was asking me, "What's your favorite interview that you've done?" And to be honest, I couldn't land on one. I mean, there've been so many great ones. And then I actually said, I think it's going to be Molly Fletcher. So we hadn't even done it yet. So Molly is on our show today. Molly she's a former sports agent and once was called by CNN the female Jerry McGuire. That doesn't have a ring to it. I don't know what does. She's turned entrepreneur. Molly, when she was a sports agent, she worked with some of the biggest names, people that really excite me, people like Tom Izzo. So I'm a Michigan girl, so Michigan State head coach of the basketball team there, Doc Rivers, John Schmaltz, and then Erin Andrews, who I've always looked up to, who is a broadcaster for ESPN and many others. She's a businesswoman. She's written 5 books. Unbelievable. She's a complete badass, sought after speaker, speaks 70, 80 times a year. And her company takes basically everything that she's learned from the high world of performance sports and trains and consults with the world's leading companies on everything from negotiation to how to better manage your energy. My words, not hers. She also hosts her own podcast. It's called Game Changers. Write this one down. It has quickly made it to the top of my list. In fact, my 10-year-old son, who's a sports addict, and I have listened to several episodes together. So thank you for your amazing podcast. And last, but most importantly, Molly is a Michigan girl through and through. And so that is the best kind of girl. Welcome to the show, Molly.
Thanks so much, Erin. It's awesome to be with you. It really is.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, girl.
And I didn't put this in the intro, but I also, I don't know if you know this, but on multiple occasions, I've described you as basically me, but with more money, talent, and fame.
No, but we are so similar. I mean, and I think it starts from Michigan and it it flourished from there, which is cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I have so many questions for you. I can't wait to share you with the audience because you're literally the epitome of the kind of person we want to have on this podcast. Somebody that doesn't just live authentically, but has figured out that it is actually a secret weapon. It's how you do things. I want to start out when you were younger. I know, from listening to other things and reading your stuff, that your parents were and are a huge part of your upbringing. What I'd love to hear is, was there something that they demonstrated versus just told you that had the biggest impact on you and the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And they are 85 and almost 80. And I've already talked to them this morning. I mean, I talked to them 2 to 3 times a day, which by the third call, they're like, honey, what? Right. I mean, and I'm almost 50 and I call my parents, right. But they, I would say probably one of the biggest things I learned from them through what they did, not what they said, was ask for what you want, right? Like go for it. And, a story that comes up for me when I think about that is, my mom was just always cutting coupons. I mean, we were definitely a middle-class family and she always loves a bargain. And I love that. And so we'd be going through the grocery store and she'd have an item that she wanted, but the coupon just, expired a month ago. And she would just work the lady at the cash register to accept the coupon, even though it was completely expired, but she'd sort of work her and often get it done. And, on multiple occasions. So I saw things like that all the time. And always felt like sort of anything's possible if you just ask for what you want and you go for it.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. Who would have thought, right? Your big career is all around negotiation, and part of that started at the checkout line. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Well, one of the things I didn't mention in your intro, but for our listeners, Molly then was a big tennis player and actually went on to play at Michigan State. And I love the story that you tell that you actually were a walk-on. To start, and then eventually became the captain of the team. But after you came out of college, right? So you played tennis. So what were you thinking? I know that you were sort of wanting to go into sports, but you went to school for something. What were you sort of thinking? I'm gonna do next.
I really wasn't sure. And I knew what I started to get clear on was that I just loved sports. I loved all the things that went with it, so when I graduated, I wanted to lean into that sports space, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I really didn't even know what kinds of opportunities existed in the sports space. And, so I tell this story sometimes, but I had grown up with a father who was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and he had all these motivational sales tapes all over the house. And we lived in this, sort of little house, and we had this unfinished basement, and my dad he'd sort of set up a old desk and laid it over top of some cedar blocks, if you will, some cement blocks, and that was his desk. And this basement had all this wood on it because it would flood all the time. And it would literally be there was just full of water most of the time. But he would have all these Zig Ziglar books in there. And I would always go, Dad, that guy looks like amazing. I mean, this guy is a stud. And I would pick him up and I would read him. And he would have, Brian Tracy, and he would have all these sort of folks. And I would read him and I thought, I want to do that. I really want to do that one day. And my dad was like, oh, okay. So through a bunch of friends and different colleagues, and not colleagues, but different sort of family friends, et cetera, and through networking and working and asking for what you wanted and all of those things, I got an opportunity to meet with Mr. Ziegler. And I had 5 minutes with him. So I flew to Dallas, saved up some money, flew to Dallas, walked and had an opportunity to just walk into his office. And it was this pristine sort of office. And I walk in and he's sitting there and I said, Mr. Ziegler, I have, and all, by the way, that I had to show for myself at this time was, that I'd graduated from high school and that I'd graduated from high school and that I had, been declined as the commencement speaker. That was all I had. And so Mr. Ziegler, I graduated from college. And so Mr. Ziegler sits with me and I said, sir, I want to do what you do. And he said, wow, well, that's fantastic, Molly. He said, well, what have you done? Well, Mr. Ziegler, nothing really. I mean, I've gone to college. I was a Big Ten athlete, all those kinds of things. He said, here's what I want you to do. Go out into the world and do something, and then you can go out into the world and talk about it. And so I ended up parking that whole desire to speak and share kind of this performance stuff that I had always been so fascinated with, and parked it and ran down the road of the sports agent space for almost 20 years. And then, so I do really feel like I'm living my mission now.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I hadn't heard that story. So tell us next, the story, because these sort of come together serendipitously. But so you decided you want to do something in sports. Zig Ziglar tells you, sorry, you want what I do, speak and write. You're not ready yet. And you head down to Atlanta. You sort of just, it's funny when I coach people, at part of when we try to discover what really they want to do and what they're meant to do, I say, it's like, just throw a bocce ball. Like, we just want to make sure we know which direction to throw it. And then so that we throw the next balls towards it. And so you knew your bocce ball was going towards sports, but tell us the story about Atlanta and what I would call your first big negotiation.
Sure. Yeah. So I taught tennis also. I wanted to move to Atlanta because the Super Bowl was coming to Atlanta. The Olympics was coming. I mean, there was sort of, there was a couple pro teams, a couple sports teams. And I thought, I'm going to try to go down there and see if I can find a job. I mean, East Lansing was awesome, but what it looked like probably was working for Michigan State. And I thought, I just want to spread my wings a little bit. A friend from high school was living down there doing an internship. And she said, you can stay with me if you want for a little bit and see what happens. And so I saved $2,000 because my parents weren't going to fund my little excursion to Atlanta like hers did, because it was an unpaid internship for her. And so long story short, I teach tennis all summer, save $2,000, pack up my little Honda Accord, back out of the driveway of the house I grew up in, and get down to Atlanta. I'm staying on the couch of my friend's apartment. And my college coach gave me the names, which I'm grateful for, of 3 people in Atlanta who taught tennis. And she said, look, I know you don't want to teach tennis for a living, but maybe they know people, right? And one of the things that I had heard when I was young was when you ask for advice, you get a job. And when you ask for a job, you get advice. So I pick up the phone that first morning, I've been eating grapes for 2 days as my drive down to Atlanta, right from the grocery store. And I call this first guy on my list, this tennis bro. And as we're talking, he said, Molly, tennis is a big deal in Atlanta. Like, people teach tennis at their apartment complexes for a little reduction on the rent. And I said, dude, you got to be kidding me, man. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. I don't have a job. I've got like $1,700 before my tail is driving 75, north. He said, yeah, no, buddy of mine just got engaged. He's about to move out of this apartment complex, but that manager doesn't know he's about to leave. You should go over there, see if she's found out yet or whatever, but they're going to need a pro in a minute. So I head over to this apartment complex. The manager was there when I got there. Thankfully, I introduced myself. And as we were talking, I said, well, gosh, do you have a tennis court here that you use to teach to all these residents? It was like 1,100 apartments. She said, we have a pro. He's amazing. Everybody loves him. And he's been teaching here for 6 years. He's incredible. I said, okay, cool. I said, well, if anything changes, let me know. I give her my card. I leave. I drive across the street. I see this little pizza place that's pretty close. And I walk in. It's called Pero's Pizza. And I said, Mr. Pero, would you consider... I'm giving you the abbreviated version of the story, but I said, Mr. Pero, would you consider giving me free pizza once a month? And I'll give it to people that come to the tennis clinic over there and get them excited about Pero's. And I can stuff a coupon in the newsletter that they deliver to the front door, and we can drive traffic back for you. I'll stuff the coupon. He said, that's insane. 15 pizzas for free or something. And I said, yes. So he loved it. I said, sweet. I said, well, I'll be back. I call my buddy at Wilson. He puts a box of gear together, sends it down to me because I thought we could give it away to people. I print these tennis tips I'd written for a magazine in Lansing. I print all these tennis tips, probably 50 of them, that I thought we could repurpose, again, put in the newsletter, get people excited about the community and the program. And 1:15, my box from Wilson comes in the next day. I drive over to the property. The manager's there. I walked in with my box and my tennis tips literally laying on top. I said, hey, I'm back. I just wanted to check in. And she literally is like, wow, what? She said, I couldn't find your card. She said, but this is incredible timing. She said, my pro came in this morning. He's getting married and moving out. We need a tennis pro. And I was like, of course, like, wow, this is awesome. And I said, well, I was just dropping off this box of stuff from Wilson. We could give this to people that come to the clinics and this tennis tips. And she goes, this is cool. This guy we had didn't do this. And I said, no, this is great. So how did it work? She said, well, the rent's $850. The former tennis pro would pay $500 a month. We'd take $350, and then he'd write us a check for $350 at the beginning of the month. I said, wow, well, okay, cool. I said, well, listen, you're not going to believe this. I tell her about this Peros thing, right? And she's like, this is amazing. And so I sort of looked at her. I said, this whole, like, the rent's $850, write a check for the $500, or, waive the $500, write a check for the $350. I said, gosh, all that. I said, it sort of feels complicated. I said, this Wilson stuff and these tennis tips. And I said, why don't we just waive it? And she literally, I'll never forget. She just said, huh? I said, let's waive it. I could move in. We keep it going, whatever. So I got to call my boss. She goes back, she comes back out and she said, you're good. So I lived in that apartment complex for free, Erin, for 9 years. It was amazing. It was awesome. So, and that really boils up to what I learned in so many ways from my mom, right? Just go for it. Ask. I mean, I think to all the things you teach, if you're authentic and you're kind and you're real, you can do it in a way. They're not going to slam the door and walk away, right? Like, if they like you a little bit, they're probably going to stand there and you can continue the conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hope people are probably going to have to rewind and listen to the story many times, because there's so many freaking lessons. I actually had Mick listen to this in the car on the way to hockey practice the other day, because I'm like, I want you to remember this, right? And I would stop it, and he's really good at context, but I would stop it and be like, okay, so I heard you give this story on another podcast. But a couple of things, you said really quickly, and it really hit me when I heard this story before. When you ask for a job, you often get advice. And when you ask for advice, you often get a job. And that, seriously, Molly, I wish somebody would have freaking told me, 30 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
And I just, I want our listeners to remember that one, that it is, oftentimes this whole concept of networking is very, like, inauthentic or annoying to people. And if you can think of it as in this context, that if you are just going out there to get advice, and also to reciprocity, anything you can bring to them, it's so powerful. But I also want to ask you, so we talked about your mother and the coupons, but what's so interesting about the story too is, you were smart, you asked for advice, he gave you a tip, hey, I'm leaving. And you kind of knew this job could easily be mine, because I'm going to know the timing. I could go in there, serendipitous. What made you, though, just go all the way in with, the Peros pizza and the Wilson? What do you think, what drove you to say, okay, I'm going to take this a step further and make sure that this is 100% my job?
Sure. I think one of the other things that my parents demonstrated and that I saw is that when people like you, when you add value to their lives, they want to help you. When you help people, when you add value, then it becomes harder for them to say no. Mm. And the reality, Erin, was that was a model I laid over top of recruiting 300 athletes and coaches. Mm. Was I would act like I had the business before I had the business, right? Like, I would behave in a way that sent a message to the prospect. Hey, look, we don't even represent you yet. And look at what this looks like. What would it be like if we actually, right, had the opportunity to work for you? Imagine. And so for me, it was about showing her, and I think that what it boils up to for all of us as business people is, how do you identify the gaps in the lives of the people you want to serve? Yeah. How do you really identify the gaps in their lives and then anticipate those gaps and close them? And part of that is getting into the heads and the hearts truly of the people that you want to serve. And so, what an apartment manager is worried about is occupancy. I mean, that's her one thing, right? And even at, whatever, 21 years old and an average student, that's not that complicated, but that's what she's accountable for, is keeping that place full. So how could I then, roll up to doing things that helped her do that? Whether it was enticing new people to want to move in, whether it was keeping people in the community really happy. And so things like that were the things that came up for me. But I think for all of us as business people, it's about thinking about the people that you lead. It's about thinking about the people that you want to work with, whether if you're in sales, if you're in leadership, and say, how can I anticipate things in their lives and then get out ahead of it and close the gap? And, I saw it work with some of the best athletes in the world, people who are constantly having people try to get in front of them who don't trust anybody. But to all the things you preach about, if you're doing it authentically, right? Like yes, we all in life have agendas. That's human nature. But if you really do want to make their lives better as part of that journey, then I think they begin to see, maybe it might be a little bit better over here with her or this way.
Yeah. I love that so much. And what was I going to say about this? Oh, so I love that you're thinking, because in that situation, most people would have been like, let me prove out to this woman what a great tennis player I am. Maybe what a great tennis coach I am. And the skills that I have on the surface, right? And instead you thought about, well, what's important to her? I mean, the only reason she cares if I'm good or not is because her end goal is, as you mentioned, is filling up those apartment complexes. And so, you talked about this a little bit, but as I think about a lot of our audience, a lot of their biggest negotiation typically is for themselves, right? It's
Sure.
in terms of promotion or getting a new job. And so one maybe mindset shift they should make, and then maybe one tactical, not to put too much on your plate.
Sure.
As you think about them negotiating in the context of jobs and promotions, what do you think those shifts should be as they think about that going forward?
Well, I think it's to the mindset point. I mean, I think it's shifting the story to that you're worth it, right? So, for example, we as women, for example, you and me, we're both mothers, right? I mean, we have no problem, right, rolling into the teacher at school and getting after her for our kids, right? Like we as mothers and fathers, but we will fight any battle for our children, right? Because we love them so much. And so, but why don't we also do that for ourselves? So I think we have to shift the story of I'm worth it. Yeah. Right. And I'm worth it. And shift the story to, this isn't really about me making more money per se. It's about maybe it gives me an opportunity to pour into additional opportunities that I can't afford now for my children, for my spouse, right? For my friends, for my family. So to me, it's shifting the story. As an agent, I negotiate on behalf of others. And that is very different than negotiating on behalf of yourself. And so I think the story is you're worth it. And I think the story is recognizing and remembering that part of this, it's not about you making another 10, 15, 20, X amount of dollars a year. It's about the fact that maybe it allows you to do more things and give your kids some opportunities that you've wanted to give them, but you can't afford now. So it's that's what comes up for me when I think about that.
That one's really good too, right? So it's, so many women are, especially again, to generally like, oh, but money isn't what really matters, because I think it's a selfish thing. But I love the mindset shift of like, no, but these are like, what could you do with an extra $10,000 for your children? Could you, buy them something they haven't had before? Could you enroll them in some program you couldn't before? What about tactical? Is there any sort of tactical, you're gearing up for the interview, job application process? What's one thing, you think they're probably not doing or doing wrong that they should change?
Well, one is, you want to be positioned well relationally, right? I really believe that negotiation's a conversation. That's all it is. It's a difficult conversation. Certainly it can be, but it's just a conversation. And so we know that conversations go better when we have strong relationships.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to have a good, solid, strong relationship. And I think it also falls into sort of what we were just talking about, relevant to, when we feel like we've added a tremendous amount of value, we've given and given and given, we've over delivered, we're well positioned for those conversations about comp because we've over delivered. If our quota was X and we delivered X plus Y, we've now created a conversation. So I think laying a sort of setting the stage is what we call it in our game changer negotiation training, setting the stage well with the relational piece and with the fact that you've over delivered and can point to that case. Well, it is important, right? From a foundational level. The other thing that I would say tactically to consider is to say, what are the models I lean into for difficult conversations? Is the facts are my role in it is and what I want. So in other words, the facts are I've delivered X, right? All the things, right? The organization is here. We as a team are here. Our stock price is here, our valuations, whatever that might be. And my role in it has been the following, right? Mm-hmm. And here is what I want. And the biggest mistake I see people make inside of negotiations is they keep talking. If you've set the stage, if you've connected, then ask for what you want and pause, right? I mean, ask for what you want. I believe it for all of these reasons. Now, the foundation's there, the relationships there, you've over-delivered the company, all of the foundational things are there. You've put your head and heart into the person that you're having this conversation with, right? You've got to put your head and heart in their world and be conscious and considerate of the other demands, challenges, good, bad, whatever, in their world. But if we do all those things, then we can ask for what we want and stop talking. The problem is, and I did this as an agent all the time, when I would say, look, we can do 12 million a year and $1 million in bonuses, or we could do 8 million a year and 7 million in bonuses. And just hold that space, right? Like, because when we've got that relational foundation, then we can ask and just stop. And that sends a really powerful message. Ugh. Like, what a lot of people do is go, well, I would do 12 million a year, or we could do 8 and we could do 5. Because what I'm thinking is, when you think about it, right, he's a leader in the clubhouse. You know what I mean? He's been that guy for you. You sell more of his jerseys than everybody else, right? He's a mentor to young guys. You've already done all that. Don't do that then. Just ask and stop.
I love it. And the other thing I like that you said, that's really the power, but just to highlight too for our listeners, I love that you said, here's where we're at. So many people are like, okay, I got to go in and how do I come up with the numbers? I'm just operational. I implement things or whatever. I don't have, a P&L. I don't have the stats. But I love that you said, like, here's where we are. The business is doing great. We, 30% more earnings. And my role in that was X, Y, and Z. Right. And I think that is a really important small point, that you don't have to own something big to be able to point to the big financial impacts that that organization has had.
And Aaron, and I think it's important. One of the things you can encourage tactically when we think about this people to do is throughout the year, throughout the quarters, write some of these things down. Yeah. Write down some of your home runs, write down some of your successes, because people have amnesia. Leaders have amnesia. They forget, oh yeah, that's right. I threw that project to you and you knocked it out of the park. Oh, that's right. I added that other thing to your world and you killed it. They forget. Mm-hmm. Like when I used to have with my athletes, I used to write down all the endorsement deals, all the stuff off the field or the course or the court that I would bring to them. Because then at the end of the year, when they were like, I only made X off the field, it's like, dude, I brought you all of you turned them down for whatever reason. So people forget. Leaders are blowing and going and they forget what you do. Kindly and authentically remind them.
Yeah, I love that. Hey girl, what's up?
Well, this weekend I put aside watching Bridgerton, episode 5, in order to binge on your new book. What does that tell the world?
Well, that's pretty sad. You need to go back and watch that episode. But yeah, the book is out. You Do You-ish is out on Amazon, and I am blown away by the feedback that I'm getting on the book.
You-ish is awesome because You-ish finished this project in a super timely manner and delivered us something that is delicious, devourable, funny, easy to enjoy, and it's practical and you get a lot out of it. Maybe not as much as Bridgerton episode 5, but it's pretty good.
Pretty close. Well, check it out, guys. More stories about Nicole in there, more fun, more inspiration. You can simply go to Amazon and search You Do You-ish.
Enjoy.
Let's talk specifically about authenticity. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're sort of the epitome. I met you in person a couple of weeks ago. My authenticity radar is always up, monitoring, like a creep. And it isn't just, obviously you're very authentic in your interactions, but I watched how you interacted with your team, right? How did you treat them versus sort of the people at the colleagues that were at this event, and you treated them just like you treated, with such respect and like they were one of your own. But I'd love to hear, what does that word mean to you? And specifically, a lot of what we talk about is it's not a permission, it's a power. What are one or two things that you think maybe authenticity was actually your secret weapon, your superpower, in your sports agent role or even in what you're doing today?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what it means to me is to be, respectfully real, right? Like we want to be respectful and have empathy and we have to be real in that or respectful in that regard. But we've also got to be who we are, right? And we've got to have the confidence to do that. And I think that is a big part of the courage to be confident, or the courage to be authentic, is to be confident. And how do we get confident? To me, we get confident one day at a time, one moment at a time, showing up the way that we really are wired.
Yeah.
And being who we really are and seeing that it can work. Seeing that when I show up as I absolutely authentically am and it works, what a great way to live. And by the way, right, it feels, as you know, so much better to live inside of the true thread and the heart and the soul of who you authentically are is so much better. And to find the gifts in it. I mean, and it's little moments, I think, that can create big outcomes. I mean, as a female, I didn't play in the big leagues. I didn't coach at the D1 level, college basketball, right? Like I didn't play out on the PGA Tour, but I represented all those guys. I didn't, hold a mic like Erin Andrews, but I represented. And so, to me, it was saying, how can I lean into who I authentically am and recognize the gifts in that and own that and see the superpower in it? When I would stand on the fence at Georgia Tech, which was where I signed my first players, I was the only female on that fence. I mean, down the fence, I can still see it, was just lined with scouts, with stopwatches, chewing tobacco, bubble gum, just cussing and whatever. And there I am, probably in a pair of pink pants and they're going, "Who's this lady? You got to be kidding me. What are you doing here?" And what I sort of realized was being who I was allowing me to serve my players in a way that was different than the people that I competed with, and in a way that they appreciated. Didn't mean that I was a fit for absolutely everybody, but there's 750 big league guys, right? I mean, I just needed 30, 50, and it was a heck of a living, right? So it was fine. I mean, go get the ones that you're aligned with. Yeah. So, making sure as leaders that we recognize that it's built little by little. Step into your authentic self moment by moment, day by day, conversation by conversation, and see how it works. And then you'll want to keep doing it. And then your confidence around it will grow. And then you'll find yourself in a really healthy space. Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there a client that you picked up or a negotiation that went really well where you handled it differently than everybody else, more authentically?
Yes. I mean, I think I would say, I'll give you an example. I was sitting in the office of a general manager and I was negotiating a big league guy's contract, and I'm sitting in his office, and I had brought my male counterpart agent to the meeting too. And we were sitting there, and the general manager was not paying any attention to me. And the guy was kind of my client, and he was only talking to my male counterpart and who worked for me. Right. But like, with me, but for purposes of this story, I never think about it like for me, but for purpose of the story, I think it's interesting. And so we're in this conversation. We're in this small little office, 2 chairs. He's next to me. The general manager's behind his desk, and he's not paying any attention to me. And I am literally getting kind of more and more frustrated, right? Because it's my client, and I was fully prepared. And so behind him, though, I began seeing these rotating golf holes on his screensaver, like one after another, and I started to recognize him, and I realized it was Augusta National. And I thought, man, maybe it's my shot. So 10 minutes or so has gone by. He's really not, it's like I'm the secretary. Why are you in there? Take your notes, ma'am. I'm getting more and more annoyed. And so all of a sudden I start to recognize. So I said, oh my gosh, I said, that's number 12 at Augusta National, the par 3, it's a beautiful par 3. I said, I love that golf hole. That's a beautiful golf hole. I said, that's a beautiful golf hole. And the general manager flips his chair around, looks at it, and he said, oh yeah. And I said, boy, I bet you've played it, man. And he said, actually, I have. He said, you won't believe it. I played a couple months ago. And I said, no way, man. What'd you get on 12? He said, wow. I said, it's awesome. He said, I parred it, and you know how guys can do this and girls can do, but I can't. But he said, and he goes, pitching wedge in, right side against the grain, 10-foot putt, just passed it and then dropped it in. I said, wow, that's amazing. And I kind of paused and smiled and looked at him. I said, you're not going to believe this. He goes, what? I said, I played it last week, man. I said, I birdied it. And literally he was like, what? And I kept going. I go, yeah, 9 iron in, 2 feet away, man, stuck it tight, rolled back a smidge, and then I drained it. And literally from that moment on, he was looking at me. Yeah. So I think it's how do we find ways to get curious when we feel like there's a disconnection? That was one of the things that I saw work all the time and that I'm a huge fan of. It's something that comes up in my podcast with everybody. Curiosity is a superpower. And so don't get frustrated, shift from defensiveness to curiosity, shift in that moment, and then you can drive connection. And if we can drive connection and build the relationship authentically, right, that's when the magic happens.
That's amazing. What a great story. I love it. All right, fill in these blanks, my friend. 2 blanks. What people in corporate America think drives success is blank, but it's actually blank. What'd you put in those?
What people in corporate America think drives success is talent, but it's actually drive. In other words, I saw the best athletes in the world. Some of them become better because of their drive, their determination, their discipline. And then I saw some with incredible talent at flounder. And what I found was the best ones, right? The Jordans, the Sabins, the Tigers, they stop comparing. They stop comparing themselves to everybody else. Saban he is really not that worried about the way Dabo coaches his football team. He knows what it takes. Tiger didn't spend a lot of time worrying about the money list or the scoreboard. I mean, yes, at times he does, but in general, overall, he was benchmarking against himself. And that's what I always saw the best do is they didn't sit back and rest on their talent, because talent isn't enough. I mean, you need talent plus, in my opinion, a tremendous amount of drive. The guys, John Smoltz, Tom Izzo, Doc Rivers, the reason they're still there, right? You can get to the big leagues on talent alone, but you won't stay there for a long time. You can get to the PGA Tour with tremendous talent, but you're not going to stay there if you don't have drive. So that's how I'd fill that in.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think it's a little bit of a planned segue into the Energy Clock, which is your most recent book, right? And quick funny story. So I was listening. So here's the story. So I'm a terrible planner. I hate planning. I hate repetition. I'm a spontaneous, et cetera, right? I have drive, but there's some holes in it, right?
Sure.
And so last week, actually, I got a note from Anne, and she said, anything Molly should know for the interview. And I thought, oh crap, I got to plan. Right? Like I got to get my together. and plan. And so it was busy. So put it off Thursday. Friday, I wasn't super busy, but I put it off. And then on Sunday, I went for a run on my own. A lot of times I run with friends, but just happened on Sunday to kind of go out on my own. And I thought, oh, you know what I'm going to do on my run? I'm going to put in my buds and I'm going to listen to some old, Molly film. I'm going to, do film. I'm going to listen to some podcasts and I'm going to plan, right? I'm going to get my shit together. So I'm listening to the part where you're talking about the energy clock, and I'll have you talk about this. Part of your tactics that you give people is to kind of figure out what gives them energy, what takes away, what's in the middle, and then you talk about how try to put the stuff that gives you more energy to kind of boost up, in front of the stuff that gives you less. And I thought it was good, but I was like a little bit of I've heard, and color code your calendar, and a little tiny bit of a BS meter. And so I stopped though, and I stopped for about the fourth time on my run. It wasn't my best run because I kept stopping and putting notes in my in my phone, and then all of a sudden it hits me. I'm freaking doing what you teach to do. Running is my jam, right? Running is one of my energy things.
Yep.
Planning is not. I'm not even doing the running and then the planning. I'm integrating the planning for the podcast into the run, and I'm having a great time, by the way. Like, it's great. I'm like listening and I'm like, oh, here's another good question. I'd love to dig into this. And so I just I had to share that, it makes so much sense, and how ironic it was that, I was essentially doing what you taught and didn't realize it. So with all of that, talk a little bit about the energy clock and where you see people, especially in the, in the corporate working world, kind of fall short, and how they can think about things differently. Clue them in.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it stems from my agent space, right? Where I watched the best athletes in the world manage their energy more than their time. They were much more concerned about where they put their energy than their time. And then I transitioned in the business world, more official business world, if you will. And I began to see corporate executives and people just obsessed with their calendars, right? Like, they're just accepting meetings, and then they'd go to these meetings and be like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I even in this meeting? Somebody else could have gone to this meeting, or annoyed that they're at this cocktail party, or annoyed that they're at this lunch meeting. And I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, why did they say yes? If it doesn't really align with what they're going for, why did they say yes? Like, what? I don't get it. And by the way, what I would see happen is they say yes. And then they'd show up to something that really mattered, right? The 4:00 pitch to the biggest piece of business they've been going after for a month. And they are drained because they've gone to all these other things that didn't matter. And I'm like, well, that's a jam up. That's a problem. So, and what I saw, like, I'll never forget, I'm sitting with Matt Kuchar, who's out on tour, and we're planning his sort of schedule for the following season. And what every tour player wants, right, is to peak at the majors, play well there, and plan against that, right? Like, a guy at his stage in his career, we had full exemption, we'd won. So we were trying to make sure that he was positioned well for the big tournaments. So what did we do? We backed into his calendar. We backed into the schedule, the tour schedule, so that he could peak in the big moments. But that wasn't what I saw in the business world. And so I wrote this book to say, how can we be more intentional about looking at our calendars through the lens of energy? And could that, in fact, allow us to show up for the things in our lives that really matter most for success? I mean, the question I ask, I have a girlfriend of mine who I just love. We're sitting we were at our little lake house the other day, and we're sitting out there, and we're on the boat, and I'm like, how you doing, girl? How you doing? She's got a big job at a big company. And I said, how you doing? She goes, man, I just got this promotion. And I go, dude, that's awesome. You making a little bit more, Jack? And she said, no, they're giving me a raise in like 8 months or something because of the fiscal year. I don't know. And I said, well, that's kind of BS, man. I mean, like, what? But you're doing double. Yeah, I know. I go, are you okay with that? She said, well, yes, I don't know. And I said, we need to kind of talk through that a little bit. And she goes, yeah. And I go, how are you doing otherwise? And she goes, well, I mean, I'm a little bit sideways with my daughter. I feel like I'm just traveling too much. I'm exhausted. I'm not really sleeping real well. And she kind of goes into like, my husband's gaining weight. It's making me frustrated. My daughter, I just don't feel like we're as connected as we were, 6 months ago. And I said, wow. And I sort of looked at her, and I said, she's a very bright woman. So what are you chasing? She goes, what are you talking about? I go, what are you chasing? She said, what do you mean? What kind of a question is that? I said, what's it all for? I mean, you got this promotion, you're working twice as hard, but you're not making any more money. Your husband and you, it sounds like, isn't in a good spot. You're frustrated with him. Your daughter and you are, why are you doing all this stuff? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, shit, I don't know. What kind of a question is that? And I said, well, listen, I love you. Okay. And I want to spend some time on this. We got to get clear, because knowing why we do what we do and knowing what we're chasing is so incredibly important, because we don't want to get to our 90th birthday party and say, what was that for? What did I do? What did I miss? I had my ladder leaning up against the wrong wall all this time. Right. And I think that that is incredibly important. And all of that, to your question, boils down to more so, where are we spending our energy, and does it roll up into the things in our lives, the people in our lives, the moments in our lives that matter most?
Yeah. Well, and you talk a lot about personal mission statement, right? Which I think this is kind of, talk to us a little bit about what that means to you, what yours looks like. And specifically, I'd love to know, are there any examples of where you had to make a decision and you made it differently because you sort of went back to that personal mission statement?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, there's a couple of moments. I mean, what does it mean to me is that I think, I've always found it interesting that companies, businesses, all of them, I mean, before they even open their doors, they've got this mission statement. They've got this, sort of vision, if you will. But people don't. Not all people do. But yet that for a company becomes this complete guiding light, right? Like this full-on guiding light that helps them, the good ones, that really put the energy and the time being intentional about it, and in fact do lean into it, that it's not just on the wall and they walk by it 100 times a day and don't know what it says, but that they really lean into it. It becomes a decision matrix of sorts for them, where they can say yes, no, based on that. Why don't we as people do that? And so I spent a lot of time and energy working on mine, because I thought, well, gosh, if companies do it, why don't we? And then that can then also be my filter of what I want to say yes to and what I want to say no to. And the shift there in my mind is what I think I would encourage people to remember is, when we say no to something, we're also saying yes to something else. When I said no to things that people thought, you're crazy, you're not going to the Super Bowl 50-yard line, 20 rows up. No, because my daughter has a play and she matters more. So I'm saying no to that, but I'm saying yes to what I've already know and gotten clear on matters most. And to me, that's, an incredibly important thing. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. What is your personal mission statement?
My personal mission, yeah, absolutely. It's to lead, inspire, and connect with courage and optimism. To lead, inspire, and connect with courage and optimism. How does that show up? Right to your second part of your question. I'll never forget. I'm standing. I was kind of running around one keynote after another. One week, it was a busy week. And I remember standing in the lobby of a hotel in Florida. I spent a lot of time in Florida and Vegas and San Diego between all these keynote locations and Dallas. And I'm standing in the lobby, and I called my husband, who's awesome. He has he's a commercial real estate guy, investment banking guy in the real estate brokerage space. And I'm on the phone with him, and we're talking, and he was super frustrated. He's like, honey, I mean, the girls were young at the time. We have 3 daughters. And he said, and he was just frustrated. I mean, he was just frustrated. He was frustrated at me. He was frustrated with the girls. He was frustrated with work. He was tired. He was just done. And I could have said, well, what do you want me to do? Come home? I mean, what do you want me to do? I mean, I've got a keynote in, 2 hours. What do you want me to do? But instead, I went to my mission statement. Okay. Now, my role right now is to lead, inspire, and connect with courage and optimism. I'm going to try to show up in a way that will serve him right now. He wouldn't want me to come home. I know that. So, and I couldn't, right? I have commitment. But so it changed the way I had that conversation. I love you, honey. I know it's a lot. It's hard. I'm sorry. What can I do from here to help you? What could that look like? And by the way, you've got this. You're an incredible dad. These girls love you. You can do it. And leaning into the business side and the frustration. But it was taking that filtered lens and looking and leading that conversation through that purpose statement lens. And I think we can do that with the people that we lead. We can do the people that we work with. We can do it with customers, because it changes. It's a quick pivot on how am I going to show up? I'm going to show up with courage. I'm going to show up with optimism. I'm going to show up with love, whatever your purpose statement is. And it's very deeply personal. And we wrote a blog about it. If people go to mollyfletcher.com and I think search for purpose statement, there's a blog there. And it kind of walks people through how to write their own purpose statement, which can be powerful.
Well, what I love about that most too is that this purpose statement is for your career. This purpose statement is for you. And I think so many people, I even had that. I remember towards the end of my corporate career, people were like, "You're such a great leader." And I was like, "Where? At work? With my kids, my husband?" Because that's the descending order in which I lead, right? Especially the husband. And what I love is that you use that filter not just for, your vocation. You used it for how you interact with your husband. I'm sure with your girls.
Absolutely.
That's something that, they preach so often. It's right that we spend too much time trying to say the right words to our kids or be there at the right time. And it's really about demonstrating, right? The
100%.
life you want them to have. So I just have a couple more questions for you. In that context, what do you think your girls, let's say 10 years from now, they'd be in their late 20s, they're on a podcast. One of them at least is on a podcast interview, or maybe all three of them. I know you have twins and another girl. What do you think they would say to that question I asked you earlier? What's the one thing that your mom demonstrated that inspired you more than what she said?
I think they would say, they joke now they're 18, 17 and 17. They say, "Mom, you're way too into us. Why are you so into us?" Because I always joke and I go, there's all these moms in the world and they love their kids, but let me tell you something. I love you. Like, it's insane. So they joke and say stuff like that. I think they would say that I lived my mission, that I lived my purpose statement, right? Like, I think they would say that I'm authentic, that who, whether it was speaking, whether it was at home, whether it was outside of the home, whatever it was, they would say she was real and she was consistent. I think they would say she was authentic. Who she was at home and who she was at work was the same person. But I think what probably as I'm processing this question, I think probably the biggest thing they would say is that I say that I put my family first, and they would say she did. They would say she did. They would say, I really won't do, I'll cap my keynote week at two keynotes. I really now have gotten very intentional about, I'll say no if there's more than 2 a week, because I know that makes me feel disconnected from my girls and my husband. So they see those things. They see me say no to things and yes to them. And so I think in part was something that I learned from my mom. And, thankfully, she kept me in check. I could have gone down a different road, right? Like getting sucked into that whole agent space. And I could have really, that is a fast lane. And I would call my mom, and my husband's awesome. But I would call my mom and I would say, "Hey, Mom, you're not gonna believe this, right? Like, I'm in a suite tonight with Jordan and McMahon, and like we're going to this thing and da-da-da-da, like all this stuff. And this is amazing and whatever." She'd go, "Cool, that's awesome, honey. How are the girls?" And I always, I could have gotten excited about the private plane and the this and the that. And what she always kind of would help me is like, no one else can be their mother. Only you can. No one else can be Fred's wife. Only me. So that was something that I feel like she and Fred, my husband, always helped me keep front and center. And so I'm grateful for that, for sure.
So inspiring. I love it. Well, I'm going to ask you just one last question. So if you could just pick one coach, it could be a sports, it could be inspirational coach, dead or alive, that I said, Molly, you get to pick one person that's going to pump you up before you go out and give your biggest keynote of the year next year. Who would you choose and why?
I would, if I had to make a phone call or choose somebody to lean into before a keynote, I'd call my mom. I would call my mom. I really would. She would say, "You got to be kidding me. You're nervous. Like, you've done this. You got this. Like, this is what she would just say all the right. She can say things in a couple words that just check me in a great way, and sometimes in a tough way. But she would get me centered quick. and she'd get me kind of righted. She'd right my ship fast so that I could rock it.
Talk about somebody who's rocked motherhood. You know, you've met all these amazing, you know, the Zieglers and the Izzos and the Sabins, and you picked your mom. I love it. That's beautiful. I love it. All right, Molly, now that people are completely obsessed and want to stalk you after this interview, where can they find more?
You're sweet. So they can go to mollyfletcher.com, and they can go to, we did something special for you, Aaron, and for your listeners. They can go to mollyfletcher.com/leadership-huddles, and they can enter B, just the letter B, cause, and for $10 off a monthly subscription to our kind of group coaching program. That's really pretty awesome. It's an incredible community of about 200 plus folks, and we meet once a month, talk about a really specific topic. So people can check it out there if they're interested.
I love it. Well, thanks again, girl. I'm so glad that we got this time and share you with the world. And again, I encourage listeners, check out her books. She has them on audio. You can pick them up and read them. Definitely check out Game Changers podcasts as well. It's awesome. And just, you know, she's on LinkedIn and Instagram and all those places. So thank you again. And I can't wait to have all our listeners hear you.
Well, thanks, Aaron. You are, you know, you're living so much of the things that I believe so deeply into, and you've stepped out of that space and to who you authentically want to be. And you're serving so many people. So thanks for what you do, girl. I love it.
Yeah. Right. Bye.
Hey girl, I cannot believe that we have recorded over 50 episodes from the virtual couch every week, but we don't make any bank. We're doing this for the love and not for the money.
Yeah, can I be honest? I kind of thought we'd kill each other by this point. So, resident do-gooder, what can people do to help us keep going?
Well, since you asked, a couple of things. One, you can rate or review the podcast on your favorite app. That would be awesome. You can subscribe and get us in your favorite podcast app feed weekly. Also awesome. You don't even have to look for us. But most importantly, share the love. Let people know your virtual secret. You're hanging out here and you're getting some virtual work-life therapy and everything in between. Invite a friend and expand their virtual universe. And the reason why? Because it's bold, it's badass, and it's basically better than drinking alone.